I just watched. I'm like, you're just caving in and whatever. But, she just wants to be done. She wanted to
Right.
be done. And so then as I recognized that with women, and I was like, no, like, don't quit now. We're almost there. Um, I know what you're entitled to. Like, don't walk away from this. And I felt as though I could offer that, as their attorney and build a practice like where we have got your back.
Welcome to Divorce Diaries, where attorney Cary Jacobson brings you real stories, hard truths, and practical advice on navigating divorce and family law. Whether you're going through it, considering it, or just curious, this is your place for clarity, confidence, and resilience.
Welcome back to Divorce Diaries, Lessons from the Trenches, the podcast where we talk about the real challenges, lessons learned from divorce, and how to move forward with strength, clarity, and peace. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, divorce attorney, mediator, and advocate for out-of-court resolutions. Today's episode is all about women's empowerment through divorce and how the process can look different for women compared to men. My guest, Heather Quick, is the founder and CEO of Florida Women's Group, and Heather is an incredible background. She began her career as a prosecutor and later practiced family law, criminal law, and even medical malpractice litigation before opening her own firm in 2006. Since then, she's dedicated her career to advocating for women in divorce and family law matters. Heather is also the author of 4 books, with a 5th on the way, including Women's Guide to Divorce in Florida and Time to Fly, the Untold Stories of Courageous Women Conquering Divorce. She's also the creator and podcast host of Women Winning Divorce. Heather, welcome so much to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your journey and why you ended up starting Florida Women's Law Group.
Sure. So this was back in, I think, 2010, and I was really trying to figure out what to do as far as, legal career. I had been a prosecutor, worked in all these places, and I needed to do something. And for those that recall, the economy was not in a great spot at that time. And so my first thought, which I think, is normal for most people. Oh, well, maybe I'll just go back and work for the firm that I did before. Not really whether or not I love that job or it was great for me. I was like, I probably should go do that. And they really weren't hiring, met with a partner. And so my husband encouraged me to open my own practice. Now, at the time, I was like, all right, I'll do it. He's like, oh, you have all this flexibility, which we know is true, right? You can work Saturday, Sunday, night, morning, day, all the, 7 days a week, all the time. But I did. And we began doing that. And I was really trying to find something that, what would I practice? So I'd done criminal prosecution. I've been a prosecutor. I had done a little defense. I definitely done family law. And then, of course, med mal. Well, I wasn't going to do PI. That didn't even meet the top 10 or anything. But then I was thinking it was criminal law because I really enjoyed that. But I failed to recognize I'm a prosecutor at heart, not a defense attorney. And also, for whatever reason, I just was really getting more family law cases through my connections, and they were coming. And so I did that. And I did what most every probably practitioner does when they first start family law. I represented either side. Right. It didn't even occur to me at that time to do anything different. And the evolution of representing women only came through just a lot of really examining what kind of cases I had, what kind of cases gave me the most fulfillment to where I felt like I could make the biggest difference. And that's really when made the decision that we're going to represent women only, because I really noticed that women kept going through the same patterns that I'd watched my mother go through when she had been through a couple of divorces. And I thought, I think we can really make a difference here, and in a difference that means something to me by helping other women.
Absolutely. And it's always, I do find as practitioners, it is often an evolution, taking on all of the cases at first,
Yes.
and then kind of deciding what niche really speaks to us. I, did something very similar, and I just got to a point where the litigation was not fulfilling anymore. And
Mhm.
so that's why we now focus on all out of court resolutions. But I think we all go through that to determine, kind of what our quote unquote specialty is going to be.
Right, right. Agreed.
What are some of your personal and professional experiences that have really shaped that mission to empower women in the divorce process?
Well, as I mentioned, my mother had been through a divorce. So my parents were divorced from one another when I was young. And then they subsequently both had been remarried a couple
Right.
of times and then divorced. And so I remember watching my mom go through the divorce and felt like she wasn't really standing up for herself, right? She
Mhm.
wasn't valuing what she had brought to the marriage. And it really, and it was upsetting for her, really emotional. And there were no children from any of her other marriages, right? It was just financial. So it can still be extremely emotional. And there had been a, power dynamic in the relationship. And so she just felt, from my perspective, I don't know that we've ever really talked about it, but like, I just watched, I'm like, just caving in and whatever, but she just wants to be done. She wanted to
Right.
be done. And so then as I recognized that with women, and I was like, no, like, don't quit now. We're almost there. Um, I know what you're entitled to. Like, don't walk away from this. And I felt as though I could offer that, as their attorney and build a practice like where we have got your back. Like, I know you want to quit. You think now is better, but if you'll, for the cases that work that way, or this is the best settlement, like, do it now, right? Before, you end up maybe not having as great an opportunity. And I really care about women. I think what they bring to the marriage has a lot of value. At the time, I was probably focusing more on my marketing at the time, speaking to women, who are more stay-at-home moms and alimony. And, if I think if your listeners don't know, I will tell you, your attorney does matter. And, if you have a really good attorney on those contested issues and you go to trial, it will make a difference.
Mhm.
And so I just felt like, because for me, I really wanted to do something that meant something to me. Just like you said, you evolve into that where I'm not going to just run a business and do that. Like, if it doesn't have some purpose for me, that really makes it so much more important. And so that's really how that happened. And so it was my personal experiences. And it was really like, those had been long before I was a lawyer,
Right.
and then I'm representing the women. I'm like, I'm seeing these patterns. And, you really start thinking about it and seeing the patterns. And that's when I was like, that's it. I can apply all that I learned growing up and observing these different ideas. And then now what I've seen in the legal arena, and I can be helpful in that way.
Right. Yeah. How do you work with women who have that pattern of wanting to give up, wanting to give in? Because it is something that I recognize as well. I do tend to find that it's primarily women as opposed to men, though sometimes it is men as well that want to, move the case along and kind of get it over and done with. But how do you support them in knowing when it's right to proceed and when it's time to I don't want to say give in, but to settle in essence?
Um, well, I think it really matters. Like, one, obviously, what are we talking, what are the issues, the finances or the children, and, understanding their particular situation, what they told me they wanted. We really work on what are your goals, objectives, and then, okay, how does that fit in with your case, the law, and what's the offer on the table? we in Florida, we have mandatory mediation in all family law cases. So there's always going to be an opportunity to settle. And, it's kind of like if the offer is somewhere in between your best day and your worst day in court, let's talk about the pros and cons. We really do try to work with our clients before mediation. Hey, what's the bottom? Like, where are you like walking away? Because then now if we know ahead of time, right, we can look at that. But then, if in a lot of cases, it's like their worst day in court and, we're not doing that. And so, this comes with the premise that we have a trusting relationship with our client. They trust us. And that's what we talk about. Obviously, you've hired us, you want our advice. If you don't want to go forward, if anything was that drastic, I haven't had anybody not. I might, I would probably make them sign a letter that this is against my advice and I don't recommend it. But like, that doesn't make anybody feel any better after they've made a deal that they didn't want to do. So I think it's more of, we got to weigh your options, know what, in a lot of cases back in the day, I hate to date myself like that, but like it was just, the law was very favorable to alimony, and it was very much dependent on what you could litigate, how good your attorney was. And so I knew they had a very good chance, and it was going to be, and the other guys offering like nothing, right? Like, I mean, it was really that crazy because sometimes when we're in the middle, we got to look at both sides. The law has changed significantly in Florida. And maybe, as I've gotten older and more experienced, I've never been against settling. I'm always a huge proponent. And now though, I really am even more inclined because I feel like the judges make a lot of mistakes. They're really slow, and it's probably not going to be your best outcome if there's any opportunity at all. Right. Like sometimes, we have those clients, the husband is just off, like it's never going to work.
Right.
And that just is what it is. Everybody buckle up because we're going to litigation, and it's just the way it is, which is usually more dependent on their husband, and they can probably predict that very early on. So I think that's it. And now it's really one of the things that, we talk to our clients about, especially when settling or mediation. It's like, listen, you're telling me these certain things are important to you.
Right.
Okay. You're not going to get those in front of a judge. He's never going to do it. Or she. I promise you, I know enough. Like, these are very specific things you want. So if he's willing to give you that, like if we can reach that, where are you willing to give? And let's keep in mind, in mediation, there's an opportunity to be creative and get something that you're not going to get elsewise. So let's work towards that. And I think that helps people especially when it comes to children. We've all got our own specific things and things that are special and that they want, because the money is what it is. And you might have to give on the money or whatever in order to do that. But, people know what they want. I try to really help them get clarity on, if we can come to a settlement, and not everybody has all these special requests, but if there are things that are really, really important to you, this is a place where you can get that.
Right.
And you have to be very clear with clients. We also do, like, that's not happening in front of a judge. Never any day of the week is he ever, ever, ever going to carve out every single Wednesday afternoon for you two to go to church together. Like, it's never happening. So, but it's that important, then let's try to work through. So, because things, there are certain things that are so important. And that's why mediation is such a wonderful, wonderful tool.
Absolutely. Because they can really craft that agreement that fits their particular family's needs, that they're, like you said, are not otherwise going to even come close to getting in court. Because oftentimes the schedules specifically in custody matters are pretty cookie cutter when it comes to a court making the decision as to what the schedule is going to look like.
It's going to be the guidelines on the holidays, the summer, all this stuff. Like, you're not getting the first 2 weeks of July every year, because that's when your family goes on vacation. It would be just so very unlikely, because, for them to do it.
Yeah. What are some of the most common challenges that you find that women face during divorce, whether it's emotional, financial, or legal?
It's probably all of them, right? Especially, and I think the majority of our clients, it doesn't matter how educated, anything you are, you could even have a law degree, doctors, it
Mhm.
really is, it's different because it's not your specialty within this area of law, and it's your life. It's
Yeah.
your life. And the emotions do take over so often. I find that to be very challenging for our clients and for us to help them. And I'm not saying don't have emotion. You're going to have them. You don't have control over that, but it's recognizing when this might be more of a emotional decision rather than a logical one, and how we proceed. I think oftentimes women, some of the challenge financially with the cost of representation,
Yeah.
and they'll say, well, I can't, you're for women, how are you charging me this much? But it's like, well, we are women and we run a great business, provide excellent service, we ought to be paid as well, and we will be. And that sometimes happens, they're like, I just can't believe this. But there's that mindset of, I don't know what, like, I should be getting this for free. It's kind of a victim thing that we try to work through, and help them understand. But it's like, you deserve to have legal representation and be advised.
Right.
So that's a big one. And I think, just as and for your listeners, the legal, once you kind of get into that legal system, it's foreign. It is so crazy different. It's very, can be intimidating. We have a different language. We have all these rules and procedures that make no sense, right, to regular people. Why is this taking so long? It's like, well, really, it's almost been 6 months. We're almost done. Like, that's great. And they're like,
Right.
what? Or why does it take so long to get this? And it's like, it does. It seems unreasonable for our regular, for anybody who's not in it. And so I think that's a challenge because, we work really hard to educate our clients, I'm sure, as you do, but there's only so much we can, and we're trying to give you, like, on a need to know basis, right? Because there's so much information coming at you.
Yeah.
So we are trying to help you along. It's just a lot.
Right.
And not everybody can hear it all, or they try, but it's a lot to process because it is your life. So that also comes up with it. And that, I think, is the interesting challenge, in particular family law, which makes it, to me, mean, hey, we're really here to help you. You are a person. We're trying to help you grasp everything we've got, to decide.
Mhm.
And it is a lot. And, I think that's what makes it really special. And for people who really like family law, is because they know they can really, help individuals. Some of them, it's like their worst thing that's ever happened to them, like they're at their worst. They're just really can be sad, mad, just, confused, lots of things.
Yes, there's so many emotions that go into it, whether it's because of custody related issues or even, when we only have financial issues, there's still
Yeah,
an emotional component. Uh,
absolutely.
do you ever have your clients work with either a therapist or a divorce coach throughout the process?
Yes, ideally, yes. Can't make anybody do anything. And they say, well, it's already so expensive. It's like, well, it'll really make your legal costs less.
Right.
We very encourage it so much. I wish more people would. I think there's a place for both therapy and coaching, and ideally you would have one of each, right? But I think I've wondered this so often, Cary. I'd love to know, like, your experience, like, because we see, as it is anytime you're on the outside,
Mhm.
something looking in, but I see all the things that you need and all the things that I know will be helpful. But for our clients, the conclusion I've come to is they're overwhelmed and there's just only so much.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I really do. I have all these books. I was like, I want you to read these. I have all these resources. Like, I want you, they, they're only willing and able to do so much. And they don't always use the coaching. or the therapy. It's unfortunate because I do think it can help in so many ways and really maybe even reduce their attorney's fees,
Right.
if they had that. But I strongly encourage it. I talk about it all the time, like on our podcast with guests, like, who I have a lot of the guests that are doing that, right? They are the coaches, they are the mental health professionals, because this is this is a major, traumatic event in your
Right.
life that will affect you forever. And it can affect your health. It certainly help, your mental health, but also your physical health. And really, when you have those lined up, I do think those clients are the most successful,
Right.
And probably more successful sooner,
Right.
because they had those resources to help them.
Yeah, I agree. When they're really working with that support team,
Yeah.
the attorney or the mediator and the mediator and the coach, having all of those team members in place, I agree. A lot of people believe, well, isn't that overkill? It's a lot of money. But in the long run, it helps you get to the result quicker because you're dealing with those emotional components with the professional that deals with the emotional components, so that you're ready to deal with the legal components with the professional that deals with the legal components. Yeah. It's but finding the make sure that they can have access to all those resources, and understand kind of the why behind it, is sometimes hard to get across.
It is, and I do think it is really a situation of how much bandwidth do I
Yep.
have, right? I don't have the mental energy, I don't have the emotional energy to add that right now. And
Yep.
I completely understand that. I get that. I do. And that's why it's like, well, not that I could make anybody do it anyway, but it's like I hear you. I'm here to support you. It's just, we think this will be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, sometimes women feeling like they are the victim. How can women begin shifting from feeling like the victim to being the authors of their next chapter?
That's a big question, right? That's like a whole episode. I think it's just taking that first step. And honestly, like a lot of things, right? Like, okay, acknowledging, understanding really what that role is. And if you believe and you're willing to take responsibility for, that 100% responsibility, a lot of coaches talk about that, and really take that on and willing to do that and really begin to look at certain roles maybe you've played just because it's been a pattern. If you're willing to look at that,
Right.
I think that is the first step. And in determining that maybe that doesn't serve you, right? Because I think if you continue in that role, even if maybe you're not in awareness about it right now, right? And that would be most likely it, because nobody hears that word and says, "Oh, I want to be a victim," that I would believe. I think that you're just not in awareness of that. But when you see that we all operate under patterns, and that maybe you could do something different and act in a different way, and what would that look like for your life? I think it starts with and that's why divorce is such a great time, which I know that sounds terrible, but like, it's an opportunity.
Right.
You have such
Yep.
an opportunity to really understand yourself,
Mm-hmm.
understand how you showed up in a relationship, understand just who you are, and give yourself the time and grace to figure out who you are and who you want to be. And maybe you were playing that role subconsciously just because that was kind of a role you'd always played in your family. And then, through coaching, there's so many resources, so many great podcasts and so many great coaches and therapists out there, but like, listening to things and maybe reflecting on how do you want to show up later. And I think then that's the invitation, that somebody who's going through something that is really, difficult, challenging, life-changing, all those things, it's an opportunity there where you can say, hey, maybe I want to do something different.
Right.
Because don't you think, I think, as the victim, you're just always like getting the raw end of the deal.
Yeah.
So if you could flip that script, that, won't be your story anymore, which could be amazing for your life.
100%. And I agree that the divorce, while no, we don't want, we never wish divorce on anyone, but we recognize that it can be a time of such growth opportunity because things are shifting. And now, you can create that next chapter in any way that you truly want it to look like.
Yeah, which is amazing because, you got married, things happen fast and all of a sudden you're in a role that maybe you did envision, maybe it's not as great as you thought, maybe it was wonderful, but like now it's changing. Or maybe you're like, wow, how did I get here? And this isn't what I thought it would be like, right? When I was getting married 10, 15 years ago, but that's okay. You have so much opportunity to, you might have to like look at how you identify yourself, right? You're not going to be a wife or I mean, you'll still be a mother, but you want to, like, who are you?
Right.
What else are you have the opportunity now to be and do? And that's where I think is, a great opportunity that when we have that in our life to really begin to tap into our full potential of what we can be and, how we can show up for ourselves and others. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And also really take a minute to reclaim what brought me joy, right? And really lean into that.
Yeah, because that's like we were just talking, right? You and I've done that with our practices. We were like, hey, we don't have to just show up and do something we don't want to do every day.
Right.
We can reshape that and make it something that gives us joy, has purpose for us. Everybody can do that,
Right.
And just in their own way with their life. And I think that's what's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you are also the host of a podcast, Women Winning Divorce.
Mm-hmm.
What conversations there have resonated most with your audience?
Well, a lot of it, we try to deliver a lot of content about the process, certainly in the beginning, right? What to expect. But now we've really evolved. And I think we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on episodes that do talk about how you can begin to heal yourself and ways you can reinvent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've also had some amazing guests, like, and talking about, maybe even how to show up better or how to, be more present or get more out of your marriage and how that can happen. And I think, it's definitely positive, right? We've had some, we have some heavy topics, but, trying to really provide a place for women that it's a resource
Right.
where they can learn. Maybe they're in the divorce or maybe they're out of it now. And there's still a lot there about, becoming who you really want to be. And so I think those are some of our most popular episodes where maybe there's something talking about new healing thing that you can do or and I think people really like that. They listen to it. So those are some of the things that have been real popular.
That's awesome. Everyone's who might be going through it or is in the process or recovering from divorce, having those resources and tools is always super helpful.
And it's really nice because, with divorce, we're not going to put that on the TV in the living room, right? So a podcast is such a good way to consume because you can put your AirPods in or you can be in your car by yourself. You can, maybe you're thinking about it. You don't know. You're trying to educate yourself, which is great. You don't have to do that publicly. Right. You don't have to be on a webinar where anybody can see your name or a FaceTime, Instagram Live. You can consume this information on your own and make your own decisions. So that to me, it allows for people a private space, to learn.
Right. And to take it in so it's not so overwhelming as well.
It's true. And I think that's where I, where I say, I mean, I'm very much into education and helping our clients. Like that's really a lot of it. I want a resource. I want you to learn and from, an attorney, not just on Google, which, hey,
Right.
they've got the AI, you can learn a lot, but help yourself to be a better
Right.
consumer of legal services, to understand a little bit more of how the process is going to be,
Right.
because then I feel like then clients can make better decisions for themselves and feel better about the decisions, because there's so much of the unknown in their divorce.
Absolutely. Well, if you could give one piece of advice to a woman who is just beginning the divorce process and feels a little overwhelmed, what would that be?
Okay. Oh my God. There's so many good things I could say. And so I hope your listeners aren't mad at me for saying this, but start writing stuff down. I'm not even, I mean, I could use the word journal, but like start writing some of the things you are experiencing and feeling down. Because what I really will promise you is there's going to be growth. Even if you're kicking and screaming the whole way, it's inevitable through a divorce, right? Because it usually does end up happening, but you'll see a transformation in yourself.
Mhm.
And I think if you can write things down, because there is a lot coming at you during a divorce, and even if it's just your questions, or allowing yourself to be curious about who you could be, and by writing that down, you are putting it out there in the universe, and you're taking it those first steps
Right.
to dealing with the emotions and the flood of information and decisions. And I have found that our clients who do write stuff down, sometimes they come to me with their list. I'm like,
Yeah.
bring it on, let's go through them all. And then you feel like, oh, okay, I've been
Right.
giving it the thought and writing it down. So that is, I think, if there was only one thing you could do, you're right, like, don't tell me to do anything else, like
Right.
attorney's
Right.
giving me a list, that would be the thing that I think will really make a difference for you in your future.
That's a great piece of advice. Well, Heather, thank you so much for joining us today and the incredible work that you're doing to empower women during and after divorce. You've shown us that while divorce can be one of life's most difficult transitions, it can also be an opportunity for growth, courage, and transformation. Tell people where they can find you.
Absolutely. So our website, FloridaWomen'sLawGroup.com. And we are also across all the social media and LinkedIn. And my name, Heather Quick. You can find us. And the podcast is Women Winning Divorce, because I think you can win and you don't have to make somebody else lose, right? If you can achieve your goals, that's a win. And I believe in celebrating our wins, as small as they are, every day, because I'm competitive, probably, really, if we're going to be honest. I'm just competitive, but and I like to win. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, for all of our listeners, thanks again for tuning in to Divorce Diaries Lessons from the Trenches. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson. Until next time, remember, divorce doesn't define you, it refines you.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Divorce Diaries. Remember, every journey is unique, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit JacobsonFamilyLaw.com or call 443-726-4912 for support and guidance.